Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing today, ladies and gentlemen? It is the second day of spring, and we were greeted with snow. But that doesn't matter to me because I am a basement dweller who spends much of his time indoors in the basement under the warmth of a heater or the cool of air conditioning. This is the Film Gamer Podcast, and we're around episode 22 of the podcast, or season 3, episode 14 or 15. I'd like to be specific, but as usual, the one thing I am bound by in terms of technology is my connection to the internet. It is tenuous at best. No, I'm kidding. I don't have data. I don't like paying the money. All you guys pay like $50 a month for data, and we live in the worst country in the world for paying for internet. And phones too. So, as I record this from my phone, I don't have access to internet except for, the occasional blip of city Wi-Fi or guest Wi-Fi that I get kicked off immediately because this is a good thing if you're ever running a business and you want Wi-Fi to support to your customers. Give them a, a 5-minute window, because most people just need to check something. You know what I mean? Like, most people need to check up who's that guy on IMDb, or what time is this thing, or check maps for a second. At least that's how it goes for me. So, good business tip, have Wi-Fi with a time gatekeeping thing on it where, if they want to jump on, they can re-sign in. But anyways, I thought it was smart. It got me done what I needed to do, and we're off to the races. So, let's get to today's topics. They're similar as usual. I'm still trying to establish a theme, which is kind of ridiculous, like getting a framework. What are we, 14, 15 episodes in? But, you never know what a podcast is until it's successful. So I'll just give you a run through of what I've been watching lately on Letterboxd. It's where I write most of my reviews, but they aren't as polished as you'll find on my website, filmgamer.com, which I'm still very proud of. Letterboxd, it's more like immediately done, what are my first thoughts, and they're not really molded or organized. So, for example, I recently watched last night Land of Bad. This is a Liam and Luke Hemsworth movie, without Chris, of course. So if you're thinking oh, how good is it? The answer is actually pretty decent. It's directed by William Eubank, who is great because he has the first name as me, but also great because he has an incredible visual eye. His first movie was The Signal, a movie which had a really cool trailer and apparently a plot that might go sideways in the third act or something, but I wouldn't know because I haven't seen it. And then he did Underwater, which was the last movie 20th Century Fox did or released before their name changed after being bought out by Disney. This guy has a pretty incredible visual eye. He's kind of like his generation's Ridley Scott, honestly. And for him to do an action movie, somebody on Letterboxd compared it to his version of Black Hawk Down, when Underwater was his version of Alien. In fact, that was complete with a central heroine played by Kristen Stewart, and she looks great in that movie. I haven't always been a Kristen Stewart fan, but she has this short blonde pixie cut, like super short buzz cut, and it looks great on her. So if you're thinking, well, that's just a Kristen Stewart style choice, you might be right. But this guy also has a good eye for visual detail. Liam Hemsworth in this movie looks great. Everything is so pristine and proper and shiny in this movie. It has the best looking grocery store I have ever seen, which is featured in the climax, where, I kid you not, Russell Crowe is shopping for his vegan wife at the same time as there is an assault on a compound happening, and there has to be, something called off. It could be a raid, or there's a bomber incoming, and it does successfully what Interstellar kind of failed to do, which was cross the mundane of everyday life worries with the intenseness combat that can seem like the fate of the universe. And I would say it succeeds at that because Interstellar failed, and you kind of know that. In general, I like Interstellar, but the scene where it's essentially like Casey Affleck and Jessica Chastain at a farm being siblings that are kind of arguing, and then you have Matthew McConaughey fighting Matt Damon for the future of humanity. That's good, but Casey Affleck surprisingly isn't as present a threat, so it's it's super unbalanced. Whereas this movie has a whole commentary about drone commentary and military communications and face to face, and it pulls it off pretty well. So much so that I wish that it was making like a stronger statement. But this is a kind of down the line modern combat action movie with the latest military tactics in it and good gear. And I like that because people are really reluctant nowadays to tell stories that are like modern combat, modern conflicts. You know, you used to be able to make something up, but people's attention to realism and stuff has gotten the better of them, where we're in this kind of quagmire where essentially we have movies that are supposed to be like super realistic, but built in some other universe. And that just kind of is completely disjointing. This movie uses real explosions, real gunfire. It's photographed really well. There aren't any quick cuts. It uses dazzling slow motion, gets some good effects in there, and I would say it was worth a watch. I rented it with my dad, so he paid the $6.95 on Kojiko Video on Demand, and we don't do that often, but it felt like it was worth the money. And it has a good supporting cast. Rick Whittle, who was in The 100 as Lincoln. I still remember that character. Good character work. He's in this movie. And Jack from This Is Us himself, the son of Rambo, I like to call him in this movie because he's kind of gets to kick ass like Rambo, and he played Rocky's son. And it's nice to see Milo Ventimiglia in something post This Is Us. He's really good here. He's a bit no nonsense, but also, a standard mentor. So that's pretty good. And then you have Russell Crowe. Now, Russell Crowe is in this interesting territory as an actor where he's kind of, of the Kevin Costner, Mel Gibson 90s era, early 2000s, brought in audiences and a big hit. But the industry has changed and he's older now. So he has to kind of fight to find these interesting roles. And a lot of where his audience is sort of in this straight to DVD land. So you have people like him and Mel Gibson, and to a lesser extent, Kevin Costner, and, to a bit of a floundering extent, John Travolta, who's kind of inherited the Bruce Willis, who kind of is the pioneer. It's weird to talk about this in that way, but the pioneer of straight-to-video land, essentially, for Hollywood stars, at least in the modern era. And the interesting thing is that when these actors care and deliver, they can really elevate a film, and you're like, oh, this is why they won an Oscar, And I was wondering while watching it, is Russell Crowe a better actor than Kevin Costner and Mel Gibson? And I would say yes, because coming off the last film I saw with Russell was The Pope's Exorcist. And that was a movie where I thought, this might actually be Russell Crowe's best performance. Like, what? I kid you not. And Pope's Exorcist is like just a simple, straightforward exorcist movie, and Russell is like killing it in that movie. So for him to go from that to this, which is similar to his role in Body of Lies, a Ridley Scott film with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he's on the other end of a drone operation, and it's like revisiting the same territory but better. So this movie has a decent director in William Eubank. Everything looks high quality. Great. This is the best modern combat movie that I've been interested in since Triple Frontier. That was the Oscar Isaac, Pedro Pascal, Garrett Hedlund, Charlie Hunnam movie from about 2017. That movie was like easily over $120 million it cost, and I enjoyed it. It was good, could have been better. This is the same, but it only cost $18 million, and it released in about 1,000 theaters, next to no promotion, still made over $1 million. So they kind of took the money and run. I think Vantage or whoever, it's one of the lesser distributors, but it's rare for a lesser distributor to get over like 1,000 theaters for a movie, which kind of shows you that this was pretty good. It's pretty good. It made a decent amount of money. It was in theaters for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then now it's out on VOD. And I would say it's worth a rental. I gave it 3 stars. So, if you're looking for a movie to watch and you want decent quality, I would say Land of Bad, despite its title, is actually pretty good. And let me just mix it up and go to games now, just because I've been at this for a while here, and we're coming up on minute 10. Let me switch gears to gaming because this is the Film Gamer podcast. My latest gaming adventure was for I got an Amazon gift card for Christmas, and I don't buy a whole lot, but aside from Adventures in Screen Trade, which was a book I bought, I decided to upgrade my laptop, which, funny enough, is the first laptop I've ever gotten. I got it in like 2012, and a couple years ago, in like 2017, it broke, and I just decided to fix it like a couple years ago, and I'm like, is this maxed out? Like, what are the capabilities of this computer? Because, I don't, part of my thing with gaming is that I want a game, but, this console has this, power limit, and this console has this power limit, and then I'm on my laptop sometimes, and then I'm on this laptop sometimes, and then I'm on my PC desktop sometimes, and they all have different things, but it's all about, like, what device do I have in front of me? Anyway, I decided to spend on Amazon, get 4 extra gigs of RAM, a DDR3 RAM, just to bring it up to 8 gigs of RAM, and play, do a bit more video editing, and maybe play Fortnite, I don't know, or something a bit more smoothly. I was fascinated the other day. I visited a kid with my friend's family, and he was playing Fortnite on a Chromebook, and they got that down to a science, the way that game is optimized. You can really tell good engineering is at work when a game like Fortnite, which is extensive, it runs on Unreal Engine 5, I think, and switching from 4 to 5, and it runs on like a potato. It's really great. So anyways, I decided to upgrade my RAM. Don't know what I'm going to play on it, maybe do some video editing. But I had to put in RAM in a laptop, which I hadn't done before. And let me tell you, with all that stuff, the hardest stuff is just finding the correct screwdriver. And I did, and I was hesitant because, you don't want to break it. Do I leave the sticker on? And the answer is yes. Yes, and yes, because you're not going to break it if you're careful. You're only going to strip the screwdriver, which I was worried about doing but didn't. But anyways, I unscrewed the laptop, which was a bit of a hassle, but and clicked the RAM in. Yeah, it had another RAM slot, and I have some worry about CPU load. Is this computer going to have the brain to function with the memory properly, or is gonna upgrading the RAM from 4 gigs to 8? Is that gonna be too much muscle, not enough memory? Anyway, or it could be just I wasted $30 upgrading 4 gigs of RAM. Why did you do that on a laptop you don't care about? It's because I love it, guys. That's why I do it. And I'm part of the reason I did that was because I'm in a bit of a no man's land with gaming, because I have an Xbox One, a PS4, and a Nintendo Wii U. But I'm not as secure in my job as I'd like to be, so it feels irresponsible for me to upgrade. And apart from that, there aren't even enough games to convince me to upgrade. There's Alan Wake 2, which I'd like to play. Astro's Playroom I'd like to try. And then, there's a couple other games here and there, like Deathloop. Yeah, that would be interesting, but it's just, I don't want to pay $80, $80, and $80 again. So, right now, I'm just kind of still clearing my huge backlog of stuff that I have, and, I'm working my way through it. I still have a bunch of Wii games, frankly, that I haven't played through. Silent Hill Shattered Memories, which I paid $100 for because it's a rare game. I have Mad World, again, another Nintendo Wii game that I promised myself I would play and haven't. And then I have stuff like, The Witcher 2 and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild that I still need to play through. Ghost of Tsushima, I haven't even touched. I got that in the dark days of the pandemic, July 2020. And I haven't touched it because it feels irresponsible to start a game. And at the same time, I feel, well, I need to do this video project. I need to do that video project. And, it's something just that I need to work on and, focus on. And it's, as usual with my generation, analysis paralysis. So I just really need to pick something and work at it. So anyways, that's where I'm at in terms of gaming. Too many games to choose from and do a backlog of. Let me know in the comments below on what you are playing at the moment. And get back to me on that. And then I'll just quickly move back to a local report. 4K Blu-rays. One of the biggest in the biz, James Cameron, came out with a trio of 4K releases, True Lies, The Abyss, and Aliens. And what people are wondering is has he gone too far in terms of upscaling? Like, has he moved too many defects that, people are mad that the film grain is there? I, for one, respect him getting rid of the film grain because that's just something of people saying, oh, it's present in the celluloid, therefore it belongs in the movie and lets you know that you're watching a movie. One of the reasons we have 24 frames a second is because it's cinematic. What makes it cinematic? Well, it looks real, but isn't. The human eye is closer to 60 frames per second. I was once told 30 frames each eye, which I guess is incorrect. But nonetheless, we see movies at 24 frames a second. And that's one of the trade-offs that we do to get lost in what we're looking at. In between those frames, our imagination fills. So that's really what we're looking at. And the argument people want to make is this a George Lucasification of what James Cameron is doing? That he's kind of fiddled with a good thing too much and that it doesn't even look like what it's intended to be. That is really what I have to say of it. That these 4Ks are expensive. My father recently got a 4K Blu-ray player, and I'll tell you, I cannot tell the difference between high-quality Blu-ray and a 4K. And the funny thing is, you look at a movie like Alien, the Ridley Scott one, and you watch it on TV in 1080p, and the film stock just looks so clear, even looks clear on DVD, that you're like, am I watching a 4K? And it's just for the average person. They don't have a big enough screen. They don't need a big enough screen to watch and enjoy it on their own. So to that, I would say, are 4Ks necessary? Kind of not. So I can see all this discussion of it being the last physical format before we figure out a way to deal with all stuff digitally for the most part. Physical media will always exist, but there isn't a desire to go beyond, 4K, even though the 8K optical was just recently discovered, or 5 petabytes. So we'll see there where it goes. I mean, for me, I realized and did a head count that I only have 18 DVDs and Blu-rays between I'm a big movie head, but I don't actually own a lot of this stuff. So that's kind of what's funny is that I'm really into it, but it's I have Crave and I have cable and I have Netflix and Paramount and Amazon Prime and I share those things presently with my family members. So I don't own the stuff that I'm watching. But contrary to what people say, we are in the most available time for movies in history. Okay? I watched Night of the Hunter the other night, And let me tell you, it was boring. But the reason I knew about it was because Martin Scorsese, who's a Letterboxd member, talked about, how it inspired him and that whole thing. And I'm like, oh, so this must be an important, great movie. And I watched it, and it was neither important nor great, but it was released when Scorsese was 13. So I can see how it captured his imagination. In my review, I talk about, well, I saw When a Stranger Calls, the remake, when I was 13. That was a movie that at the time posted a Super Bowl record, starred, a hot star at the time, Camilla Bell, and it is not really a great movie. Simon West, I believe, who directed it, was a stunt coordinator. I think he did Con Air, or I might be confusing him with another Simon. But it's not an especially great movie, but it rips off so many movies in terms of Wait Until Dark or Black Christmas and stuff. But the funny thing is just that regardless of the movie that you're making and what you rip off, it's somebody who's seeing it eventually for the first time. So, when I was 12 or 13, I watched When a Stranger Calls for the first time, and I watched it on my own. It was one of the first, adult movies I remember watching on my own, even though it's actually, PG-13 for that specific reason, so young people could watch it. And it's like a one-and-done movie. It was a hit on the weekend that it opened, made a bit of money, and nobody's ever talked about it again. Is it a good movie? Probably not, but it's reasonably polished, as many mid-2000 movies are. And I was wondering, while watching Night of the Hunter, is this Martin Scorsese's When a Stranger Calls? I know people will find that blasphemous because Martin Scorsese has impeccable taste, and to compare my movie that I thought of when I was 13 to his is facetious or ridiculous or something like that. But I think we're missing the opportunity to engage with art on that level as much as we want. I mean, it'd be a sin not to mention this week The Zone of Interest, which hilariously is kind of having a rebirth now. And the reason I say hilarious is because this is a movie that essentially won 2 Oscars. Many people voted on it. It got 5 Oscar nominations, even, Best Picture. And it was people voted on it because it's World War II, Holocaust, easy check mark box. I'm sure it's great. And nobody watched it or engaged with it. And then now, following the director's best international film release, it's from the UK. It stars mostly German people. Following its release from the UK, it won Best International Feature, and in the Oscar speech, the director, Jonathan Glazer, who's only made about four movies in his career. He was a music video director and does other things. But what he has done is he said that he renounced his Jewishness along with a group of other people based on the attacks of October the 7th, I believe, or October the 10th. Anyway, in Israel, and then the ongoing attacks on Gaza with Benjamin Netanyahu. And the funny thing is that all the Jewish people who just kind of endorsed it because it's a Holocaust movie somewhat blindly are now oh, how dare this person connect the Holocaust to real life horrors happening today, which makes the movie more relevant than ever. It is the first World War II movie to crack the shell of armor of exactly what the filmmaker intended to do. This is a movie that is on a subject that's been done hundreds of times before that people disassociate from. And this person, Jonathan Glazer, what he's saying is we kind of get too comfortable in our lives with that kind of stuff. And we need to remember that this thing happened at a particular time, and it could happen again to anyone, by anyone. And that's what we need to remember, is that we can't distance ourselves from monsters, because we have to recognize that these people are human, evil human beings. People tend to think that it somehow dismisses the Holocaust or something. There's kind of a brain dead write-up that CNN did where they seem to think that somebody watching the movie, The Zone of Interest, will somehow miss that it's about the horrors of the Holocaust or something, because it doesn't directly show him at work. I mean, we can get into detail, but frankly, you can just listen to my review. In the conversation, I posted the conversation text verbatim, essentially, on filmgamer.com, but it's a few episodes back. And it's just kind of funny that somebody kind of broke the armor of like World War II Holocaust movies to mean something meaningful again. And for that movie is worth watching. It's also, as I said before, it's famously like not a boring movie, despite taking on like the mundane day-to-day life of like ordinary Nazis who live next door, but doesn't, had you not known that context, which is pretty difficult to miss. You might just see it as an ordinary day slice of life. Like, imagine if all the same stuff happened and was somebody complaining about work and all that, and it was shot in that way, but it wasn't about World War II. That's the objective that Jonathan Glazer attempts to do with this movie, that he succeeds in capturing. And what's happened is basically, following his speech, about 450 Jewish creatives have signed a letter saying, how dare this man say that stuff about his own movie? And, it's anti-Semitism to speak the way he spoke, because he's, I guess, attacking the Jewish state, because he basically weaponizes the Holocaust into a movie that somehow, of the moment, criticizes the Israeli government, which is just kind of like shows you how brilliant of a masterstroke that movie is, if you want to read it that way. I don't think he made it with the intention of like going against Israel or Benjamin Netanyahu, who we all know is like a war criminal and is just totally blowing it with this like war against terrorists who are terrible people. They've kidnapped 100 hostages, and yet he has managed to kill as many, if not more, people in the process. And it's just a case of a leader who should have gone to jail, should have stayed in jail. But instead of going to jail, he was reelected, and surprise, surprise, handled the worst situation imaginable with these horrors. Most people in early October, again, I forget if it's October the 7th or October the 10th of last year, 10,000 Jews killed, the most since the Holocaust. And all of that goodwill has slowly drained away by a leader who either doesn't know what he's up against or is using it opportunistically to kill Palestinians. And I don't want to get into too big of a like political talk on this, because again, it's the Film Gamer podcast. But it's just kind of interesting how somebody has made a successful film that has called to mind the current war. And I just cannot recall a movie or a video game that has done that so incisively in the past. So hats off to you, Jonathan Glazer. I commend you. This is like the best win that you can get, because we all know you're not going to make another movie for like 5 or 6 years or something. So yeah. So going forward, I'm still waiting on the 4 unique gaming experiences to get a PlayStation 5. It says a PlayStation 5 Pro is coming out. So maybe I'll wait for that. It'll probably be as expensive as a PlayStation. PlayStation's the market leader, so they're kind of like, well, why not go forward? Why not push forward, get a gaming upgrade? In the meantime, they haven't successfully cut costs, so hopefully this will introduce lower costs or something, and we'll see where it goes. But because they're coming out with a PlayStation 5 in December, and because they're coming out with a Switch 2 next year, I'm holding off on next gen still. I'm still on Gen 9 or Gen 8. Yeah, I'm still on Generation 8. So that's what I'm doing. I'm holding out for something greater, because Call of Duty still comes to this platform. And, I play Call of Duty every year. And then I have a great gaming backlog. So, yeah. I'll keep playing as long as the games still come out. Tomb Raider Remastered just came out. They're still coming out with games. Xbox One and PS4. And the odd game like Cyberpunk I'll get on PC and then not play. But that's kind of where we're at now. And I'll see what the reviews are like for Hellblade 2. And I'll see what the exclusivity, if that stays with the Ukrainian-developed game Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. And, yeah, that, if anything, will convince me to get a next-gen console. But the thing is that those are Xbox exclusives. And considering that Xbox put on a pop-up ad on my Xbox One, I don't feel like I'm being valued by Microsoft for getting that, like a $500 machine, essentially. So, as good of a price of a Series S is, or a Series X, and all the games that they have, I don't feel like I'm treated for my value for a next-gen console. Again, I bought my brother a Series S, and it's a great gaming console, especially if you're a casual gamer. It's the perfect one, and also emulates wonderfully. So look into that if you're getting into next gen. It's a great way in, 330 Canadian if you're looking for it. But yeah, next gen, I'm still going to have to wait because games take too long to make. There aren't enough of them, and we're not innovating the same as we did in Generation 7 with the PS3, 360, Nintendo Wii era. That's my update for this episode of the Film Gamer Podcast, and I want all of you to take care. Let me know what movies you're watching, what games you're playing, even TV shows. I just started Shogun. That's okay. I got it on cable, which I didn't think I would get. I thought it would be one of those FX on Disney Plus only shows, which is a bizarre business strategy, but thankfully it still plays on FX in Canada, which is nice for like the 10 people who have it, which includes my father, thankfully. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Somebody almost got hit there. I'm recording this in my car. If I would have stopped it. I want you guys to know. I mean, you can't tell. This is all audio, but I will not stand by. But you can stand by for the next episode next week on the Film Gamer Podcast. Chill.